hello poodling around us. Now, let me tell you, it's so easel this summer. If you head to Levens Hall and Gardens, where art is going to be the order of the day, and your enjoyment of it is going to be as simple and seamless as anything. This is all thanks to the involvement of a truly inspirational self-taught artist who has overcome personal adversity and the challenges of epilepsy to make a real difference to others whilst using art as therapy. Also, channeling the nourishing aspect of nature, Bob Sutcliffe has helped make the very best of his situation and transform not just his life, but the life of others too. Intrigued? Well, let's find out more. Good morning, Bob. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be chatting about a new project that you're undertaking at Levens Hall and Gardens in Cumbria this year. But before we do, I think it's important that we understand a little bit about you, as really that's a starting point, isn't it? So would you mind telling the listeners what happened in your life at the age of 36 and then really again when you were 46?
Oh, thank you for having me. Yes, I've got quite a story, I suppose. I was working for the Lake District National Park Authority when I was 36, and I hadn't felt 100% for a few days, but in a big meeting with lots of sort of board members for the National Park Authority, I stood up, said I was bored, and then collapsed, and that was the start of me being diagnosed with late onset epilepsy. And whilst it sort of sounds quite amusing, in terms of how it started off, it was quite traumatic and quite a shock to the family and me and also my colleagues. But gradually, it took quite a while. I got medication and referred to an amazing consultant who sort of found me the right sort of medication that would allow me to work again. Initially being told that I wouldn't work again. And then I took the opportunity, actually, because it was sort of a bit of a life affirming sort of moment when I just thought, actually, you know what, I need to do something that I really wanted to do. So I'd retrained as a teacher, a primary school teacher, and sort of embraced that new job with great gusto and loved it to bits. And then sadly, when I was 46, I had a series of heart attacks while I was in school. Didn't do anything about it because I thought I was too young probably to have a heart attack. So I carried on working that day, and then when we got home at night, my wife and I decided that maybe we needed to call an ambulance. So I'd had a series of heart attacks. So two significant and life changing medical occurrences within probably a relatively short period of time. When you think that actually epilepsy doesn't go away.
Mm. And it was that second really massive bump in the road that helped you change direction and do what you do today, wasn't it?
Mm.
And that's all because of a gift that your brother gave to you, amazingly. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. When I was sort of trying to recover from epilepsy, I treated it in the wrong way as something that you can delete. You know, a little bit like, well, I've got a broken leg, it will get mended, and then I'm off, and then that's the end of that. It doesn't work like that, and I really struggled to come to terms sort of mentally with the fact that I've got this lifelong condition, that I potentially couldn't work, potentially wasn't driving for a long time. I sort of went up and down. I suffered a lot from anxiety. Didn't do anything either. I did too much, and then I would have more seizures. And then I didn't do anything that was actually productive. So when I had a heart attack, I decided, right, well, I'm going to take a different approach to this. I'm not going to watch daytime television. I'm going to get fit again as soon as I can. And my brother came and he said, no, I get what you're trying to do, but with a heart attack, it's different and you need to just slow down. And he bought me a set of paints and some paintbrushes, paper, and said, why, you are creative. Why don't you just paint and do something that you'll enjoy doing, but it's not going to damage your whole body in the process? And so I started to paint, and sort of the story starts there, really.
And art was something relatively new to you at that point. Let's just make it clear. You didn't really have a training in art, did you?
No, I didn't. I was the creative one in the family, I think. Mum and dad and my sister and brother would definitely say that. But that was sort of all doodles, and I never painted, definitely not with watercolours. I had been to university and had trained as a landscape architect, and that was pre-computer aided design. So you definitely had to draw things on a drawing board, but it was graphic, and just how you see a tree from above, or how you see plants and layout. And so I would definitely say that when I paint plants, I feel more at home and comfortable with that than other subject matters. But yeah, I definitely not painted in the style that I do now.
Mm. So here you are with this box of watercolours, which some people might just regard as a nice leisure option. But you really took that gift and painted a whole new future for a number of charities, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Because I was off work, people once they started to see what I was doing, I think probably that what makes it slightly sort of more, not more new, more sort of like, oh, that's sort of different or newsworthy, was the fact that quite quickly people would say, "Crikey, that's amazing," and that wasn't after. I think they thought I'd suddenly be able. It was happened overnight. It didn't really happen overnight, and I was doing a lot of practice, but I was able to do something quite quickly within that period of time that people said, actually, will you paint my dog, or will you paint our favourite landscape scene for us? And when they started doing that, I sort of said, well, and they want to pay for it. I said, well, I don't feel comfortable about that. I'm on sick pay. I feel that I shouldn't, it just felt wrong. And so I decided I'd raise money for charity. And so initially the money went towards the British Heart Foundation, sorry, and then Epilepsy Action raised, and it just built and built to from. I can remember sort of raising about £500, thinking, "Oh wow, that's such a lot of money," and now we're about over 500,000. So it just seems to be. It seems mad, but
Yeah.
also Booth's supermarkets. I've got an old friend who got in touch over social media and said, "You know what? My husband works for Booths. You should try and sell your images as cards in Booths, because they'd sell like crazy." So really, that's how the charity side of it went mad, was because my artwork went on greetings cards, and they sell 1,000 a week.
Mm. Now, don't be shy here, but can you tell us about the honours that have been awarded to you as a result of your charity work?
Oh my goodness, yeah. It just feels really weird. I suppose I got an award from. I've got a BBC Fundraiser of the Year award. I've got an Epilepsy Action Fundraiser award, which was lovely. I've been appointed to the Order of the British Empire by the Queen, all just for services to charity and education. And I mean, it's bizarre. Part of me, I suppose I don't always sort of share that, but sometimes I will when I think it makes a difference. And actually, I've been able to establish a charity of my own, and I'm sure because I've won awards, that's helped. And so I use it when I need to use it, and so I'm very honoured to be able to
Mm.
share that, and very, you know, I think if you get what I mean by how I've explained that, I
Yes, yeah.
yeah, I yeah, they I think they open doors sometimes to people when they think, actually, he means what he means what he says, he's going to raise a load of money.
It's about trust, isn't it? I think as
Yeah,
well.
it is. Yeah, it is. That's exactly what I mean. And I'm really honoured to have been even nominated for those sort of things. And when I've won them, and yeah, it's just I've just it's lovely for my mum and dad, to be honest, as well.
Yeah.
That I don't, they're proud of me, and
Yeah.
I like
Take
it.
what you can get, Bob.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy
If
with that.
someone's going to give you something, just accept it.
Yeah.
So, this charity that you've set up, it's quite unique, isn't it? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I got I got asked a lot of the time when I was fundraising, um and the money sort of kept rolling in. We Booths would help me sort of make decisions where it went, often in their sort of area of like their catchment area for some of the stores. But then I felt that as it went on, we need more structure to it, and of a transparency in how the money was being handed out, and also a decision making process that would mean it wasn't always on me. So I had a really good think about where the gaps were in funding, and also something that would link to what I was basically doing myself. And so I knew that the benefits of being artistic or creative really helped me. So when I like today, I will, if I felt anxious, a bit worried about my epilepsy, or very tired, I won't just sit and sort of have a complete. Oh, I'll just lie on the settee. I will paint, and it will make me feel better. I know
Mm.
that. I know that helps me. So if that does that to me, I did quite a lot of research and found out that a lot of hospices needed to offer those sort of type of activities to either the people in the hospice as residents or their families. And so I set up the Creative Health Trust so that it funds hospices when they need to provide creative activities at any time,
Mm.
often in for bereavement support. It's the only one in the UK that does that. And it's a very easy way for them to apply so they don't have any. It's meant to be done so that they just apply. They don't have to have match funding. It's just really simple. And I wanted to make sure that we could make a difference. So we've handed out over £20,000 in different grants. It funds a lot of the time. It funds an art therapist in
Yeah.
hospices, and it's just growing and growing. And I feel as if we're making a real difference, and it's measurable. And
Mm.
also other people can join in that cause as well.
Yeah.
So there's a story in the charity in itself about encouraging people to be creative, but then also there is the actual what we do.
Yes, indeed. And now here we are in spring 2024, and you've
Yeah.
got another means of raising money for the charity, haven't you? Can you tell us about your new book?
Yeah. Well, often people have said, "Oh, your story is bonkers," really, I suppose, in terms of the positives and also sort of the drama beside it, beside it with the health sort of story over a period of say 10 years. And so they said you should sort of write all that down. And I I was asked to do a book of illustrating a book of children's work, actually. Sorry, a children's story. And it didn't feel right. I didn't feel actually my artwork fit that. So it ended up being more biographical in terms of the book. And also, so I said, if someone else writes a story about my sort of life in the last sort of 15 years, and then I'll provide the artwork, and hopefully it will inspire people to have a go at art, and also and it's themed on trees, because of all the things, it's my first sort of love is to paint trees and sort of nature. So, like I was explaining before, it's where my initial sort of training in landscape sort of came from. And
Mm.
so, yeah, so the book's out, and if people want to buy it, it will help support workshops in hospices and elsewhere to help people feel better when they're at their lowest.
And this book is called Tree Therapy, isn't it? And am I right in thinking that most of the works in there are from the Lake District, but there might also be some from Finland? And
Yeah,
why
there are.
is
Yeah,
that?
it's a
Yeah.
bit. That's right. Finland was the first time I'd been away for years, because when you get diagnosed with epilepsy, you generally people lose their confidence, and being in strange places like abroad, it for
Mm.
me was particular challenge. And I thought, I don't think I really, really want to go abroad and feel that if something happened, I wouldn't feel safe. So going to Finland was really special for me. And when we went, I just was totally taken by it. And the light in Finland was just incredible. I've never seen anything like it from an artistic point of view. And it could be the angle of the sun, but also the reflection from the snow. It was just beautiful. And I just took so many photographs. So I just thought, oh, I'm going to put some of those in this book as well, because the Lake District is equally beautiful. I'm so lucky to live in the Lake District. But yeah, it was just lovely. And so hopefully that people, when they get the book, they'll see that they would probably think, actually, that does look that it's not in this country. That light is slightly different.
Yes.
The sky is a very different colour to ours.
Those trees are slightly taller.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, so that's it. You probably can tell then I love Finland.
Indeed. Well, I used to have a Finnish pen friend actually, but I never got to go out there.
Oh,
So
you should have done it. That was a mistake.
yeah, she managed to come here, but I didn't go
Oh,
there.
you should have done. You'd have loved it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how many of your works are in the book, as I haven't counted them, but I can see they've been created using a variety of different media: acrylics, soluble pastels, watercolours, ink, crayon even. But which is your favourite to use? And do you ever just sketch in pencil?
I think my favourite is just purely watercolor. Yeah, that's what I've always, every painting always has some degree of watercolor in it. I think I use those sort of additional things like acrylics and crayons. Sometimes just to add like the sort of a top layer when I think maybe the lines are a bit harsh. And that might be sometimes because I'm not a trained artist, and it may be that I may make mistakes with the watercolors that I can then soften a bit with different media.
Mm.
And I do sketch actually. I do sketch, and I've just finished a sketch that's based more on pencil, and particularly with buildings. I think I'd quite like to do more where maybe do it with a bit of a wash, a very pale wash of color, but not much, and allow the drawing to speak for itself. And I did a workshop yesterday on painting birds, but for the very first time, I usually say to people, don't worry about not being able to draw. Still paint, but don't worry about the drawing. If your drawing's blocking that, then trace. They traced in Leonardo da Vinci's time. They had machines to help them transfer images onto paper that they didn't need to draw in freehand. There's no shame in tracing. And so I was trying to explain that. But then actually, when I was sketching, I thought, actually, you should have a go at sketching because I bet you'd be good. So we had a sketching sort of hour and they just used pencil. And I do, so there's a place for everything. And I suppose the answer to your question is no, I don't do it a lot, but I want to do it a lot more. I
Mm.
think you'll see. I try different things all the time. So
Okay, so having been sent a copy of your book, Bob, what I would say is that I find the narrative really uplifting because there's a lot about reflection, nourishment in nature, and gratitude, isn't there?
yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's a bit about for me. There are definitely people far worse off in the world than my story medically, definitely. But it's all relative, isn't it? So it's how that you personally react to things that aren't a positive thing in your life. But for me, when I look back, I think actually everything that felt like a negative that I wouldn't be able to do, or I felt a bit restricted or worried or anxious, actually it's all come out as a real positive. And for me, they're just
Mm.
looking for like enjoying Finland with a completely new light. It meant so much more because of what I've been through, and also that I was looking around that country for potential paintings, and that's such a blessing to be able to do that.
Mm.
And people who follow me on social media. I'm not a great social media person. In fact, I don't do anything about myself, but I do it from the charity fundraising side of things. And so people do see my paintings, and people often will write messages saying, "You really, really help us just by sending a nice, just a comment under your paintings. It's just brightens my day." And I think that, and if that serves a purpose to people, I'm happy with that. They're more than happy. I'm honoured to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm really
Mm.
pleased. And the feedback from people when they've said they've read the book said it's not just about the pictures; it's about the comments. I've got the Jenny Longbottom, an psychotherapist, has provided the words with the paintings, and she's just captured something where you might go, "Oh, yeah, I think that when I'm looking at something like that," or "Yeah, I feel a bit like that when I'm feeling a bit worried," or and
Yeah,
hopefully it'll encourage people just to have a go at doing something creative.
indeed. I think you perhaps inspired me to try and have a go at something. So,
Yeah, it can be, and it can be anything. So when
yeah.
the charity funds grants for hospices, they don't have to be doing painting. The arts is so broad; it could be a cookery class or a gardening group.
All
It's
right.
really broad, yeah. Because and I wanted to make sure that happened because I didn't want them to say, "Well, we have a gardening group and there's that, you won't fund that." And I thought, of course we will. It's still about being creative, and it's still providing an outlet to someone to distract their brain from what
Mm.
they are going through so that they're either unable to talk about it or forget it for a moment.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Now, your tree therapy book is going to have an official launch at Levens Hall and Gardens on the evening of March the
Yeah.
26th. But that's not the only reason why we'll both be taking in the delights of Levens Kitchen, is it? Could you
No.
tell us what else is happening at Levens Hall and Gardens throughout the season, from March the
Well,
27th, actually, to October
yeah,
the 4th?
yeah. Well, we've got it's the first exhibition I've ever done. So it's an exhibition of all of, I suppose, not all my work. It's a variety of different pieces of work that will be out set amongst the garden throughout the season on giant easels. So normally people see I specialize. If people look at my work, I specialize in sort of realism and a small detailed original piece of artwork. People very rarely see that. They see them as greetings cards, really.
Mm.
So this is a real opportunity to see that as they're blown up pieces of work that will be out amongst the world's famous topiary all season. So sort of modern with modern sort of pieces of work amongst that ancient setting. I'm just really excited about that. So yeah, there's an exhibition. Yeah, it's called Tree Therapy because a lot of the images will be from the book, but there'll be new stuff as well, but all based around trees.
And they're going to change, I think, fairly frequently, aren't they, throughout the
Yeah,
season?
they are because I am prolific because I paint not for just for the output of fundraising. I do paint for my own health. So as I explained earlier, I will choose subjects that I think I just want to paint that, and particularly the Finland images in the book were done for just for me. So there's a lot that will be seen, and we will change the exhibition as we go throughout the seasons. And also that will fit. The aim is to work with the head gardener, Chris Crowder at Levens, and fit the images so that they fit with the changing colour of the beautiful bedding plants that intersperse the topiary at Levens. It's a very changing, I think people misunderstand that with Levens Garden, is that it really changes throughout the season. It's not this set topiary that's, well, that's a topiary and it's old and it's never moved. Well, it is
Mm.
like that, but amongst it is this wonderful tapestry of sympathetic planting that Chris creates with his gardeners, and that's what will be lovely to match that in with appropriate paintings that will sit amongst them.
Yeah, because I think they grow 30,000 plants a year on site, and then those get put into the bedding twice a year for sort of the spring planting and the summer planting.
Yeah,
Like you say, the colours of those plants as they develop throughout the season can be completely different one month to another. So there's
yeah,
always this changing tapestry under the topiary, but also in the rest of the gardens too.
yeah.
Um,
It is. It's a fascinating setting. Absolutely, it's incredible from a garden lover like myself, and obviously in training within landscape architecture. It's a real classic that you all learn about when you do your courses. But from a layperson, it's just a fascinating place to go and see gardening in the most unusual way, really.
mm, well,
I
people
can see why
describe
Chris
it.
Crowder's been there for a long time because it's
Well,
just so wonderful.
people describe it as Alice in Wonderland, don't they? And I think there is
Mm.
an element of that when you walk through there. That is what kind of strikes you. It's just like a different world when you first enter the garden.
Yeah,
But
definitely. And I think that's actually hit the nail on the head. That Alice in Wonderland image and the paintings amongst it is meant to go, oh wow, it's sort of not dramatic in the sense that I know Chatsworth. You sometimes see in Chatsworth House, they'll put very dramatic modern art there. It's not going to be like that, but it is
mm,
meant to just go, oh, I never expected that there, and just
yeah.
prompt a discussion.
Mm. And with the paintings changing regularly, I think that's a great reason also to get a season ticket this year, isn't it? So you
Oh
can
yeah,
keep going back and keep seeing what's different and just, because I think they'll move as well. The paintings won't always be in the same place, will they? So people need to discover them in a way and
yeah.
seek them out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'll be. I would hope that if you went 3 or 4 times, you would see a whole different set of paintings during the season, and
Mm.
also different locations.
Yeah. And I think this seasonality is probably a great thing for you, as I get the sense from your book that you believe trees perhaps have a different spirituality at different times of the year. Am I
Oh
being right,
n-
reading too much into that, or is that right?
no, no, not at all. I think one of my most popular tree images in terms of a card sales would be just the bark of birch, bare
Mm.
birch, and it can be it. people just, I think they're drawn by. I mean, it could be anything when you go into it close up. It could be anything. It could be the legs of zebras or something like that, and it just captures something with people. And then and other times people will go mad. They'll go, "Oh, that painting of the autumn leaves is incredible," and I've spent hours and hours painstakingly put all the different colours into it from the leaf.
Mm,
But yeah, people are very drawn by that. That, like, in a way, a lot of people are drawn by any painting of a robin, because personally, a lot of people will talk about robins and think, "Oh, I always, when I see a robin, it reminds me of my grandma,"
yeah.
and and there's a link between bereavement and robins, and also the Christmas side of things. And then the same with trees. People have an association with a tree. It might also be this. I remember climbing a tree like that, or I remember swinging on
Mm,
one. Everybody has a memory about a tree, and whether it be a walk or it, all autumn leaves, or a song that they sang about it at school.
mm,
It's always there. And I think that's why I wanted to start off doing an exhibition by doing something that everyone would be able to link to. It wouldn't be inaccessible at all.
mm. And I think also the way that you're going to sort of position these easels around the gardens, I think it's going to be a great way to tell people that there's more than the topiary garden at Levens. Because I think people arrive, and because it's so world famous, they think, oh, that's the topiary garden. But they don't then realise that there's all these other beautiful areas of the garden to see, the borders and, the herb garden, the croquet lawn, all these other things to explore. Hopefully,
Mm.
I think your paintings might encourage that. Do you think that people have to seek them out to find where they are and therefore
Yeah.
tick them off a list or whatever until they've found them all?
Yeah, they will have to. We are going to make it so that we thought of doing a plan, so you sort of went from one to the other, but it won't be like that. People will be told there are 11 paintings out there. They are on easels, and they will change throughout the season, and also they'll be moved. I mean, people don't probably, they won't know that they'll look at this group of very managed shorter trees, and that's a nuttery, and it provides hazelnuts, and
Mm.
that's not very common to see that.
No.
And when you get a chance to talk to Chris and the head gardener there about that, it's, wow, I never knew that, and so I didn't know that. And there's so many different parts to it, even right at the back, little shady areas, and yeah, I'm hoping that people will walk more amongst that garden and see far more than they've ever done before.
Mm. Going back to the topiary garden, however, it is the world's oldest and it is a Guinness World Record holder. So, how big a thrill is it to be able to paint trees that have been around in some cases for like 330 years in that form?
It's amazing, really, and I because I've done a lot of new works based on Levens, and some of them I actually did, which probably are more abstract for me. They are still realistic, but they're people have to think, what part of that is he painting? And it was when I went, you can't. I actually stood inside the topiary. You can actually get in it because it's so old. It's sort of spread, and you're
Mm.
like within this, within this structure, and you look up, and the light comes through. And I've tried to capture that with the branches and the leaves having the sunlight behind them. I thought, oh my goodness, that is incredible. So I felt really privileged to be able to do that. And it is amazing. That's the other side of it, that you don't just see the shape of topiary. If you can, there's different types of topiary there, including these large hedges that you can walk within. And you need to experience those as well as just looking at shapes.
That always reminds me a little bit of, I don't know, Harry Potter in the maze kind of thing.
It's exactly like that. Yeah. You expect someone to drag you off in the corner, but it's not as
Indeed.
spooky as that. But definitely, it's magical for families. And the paintings and the garden itself in combination, that hopefully will be really accessible for families to really enjoy this season.
Mm. And I have to say that when I was reading your book and, considering the mindfulness that comes from being around trees, it made me think how much I love to sit personally under the great umbrella tree where there's a little seat and just
Yeah.
watch the world go by because it's such an amazing place. You can see all the plants at a certain level. The bees are buzzing around. You see a few visitors' legs sort of walking around.
Yeah.
And come rain or shine, it's just a wonderful place to just relax, I think. But thinking about the rain and shine thing, how are you going to waterproof your works to stop? Because it can be a rainy place at Levens, and the Great Umbrella's a great place to be an umbrella. But what's going to happen to your artworks, and how are you going to protect them?
Well, there'll be two ways of seeing them actually. There'll be the original small pieces will be inside, dotted around inside the cafe and in the shop, and the exhibition pieces outside have been specially created, so they've got like a waterproof coating on them, and they've been tested in all sorts of different weather conditions. In fact, one of the storms, whether it was Jocelyn or Ashley or Betty or whatever it was, we
Yeah,
tested it over in Levens, and I got this message from Chris saying it's okay, it's still up, and it's not got wet, and also we've tested it in very bright sunlight so that they don't fade or anything like that. So yeah, we hope we've been rigorous
yes.
in that
Well,
aspect. Yeah, but
yeah.
thank you for
Hopefully,
asking
fingers
because I'll get
crossed.
yeah, people will probably ask all season going, I don't get how you can do that, and now they won't just start to sort of warp or but
Yeah.
yeah,
Or maybe
it,
we should worry about them blowing away. Perhaps that's more.
they're very heavily weighted down, and they're
Oh,
on
right. Okay.
the easels that they're on have been specially produced. So they're not an easel that you'd buy in a shop. They've been made especially for the exhibition, and they are really substantial, using local source wood, actually probably from storm damage. So
Mm,
they're beautiful pieces in themselves, and so they they fit with the scale, because I didn't want to put something like a large scale piece of artwork there and then someone think, well, it doesn't quite fit with that very interior sort of easel. It just doesn't. It sort of jar. So yeah, the easels are a piece of artwork in themselves.
all right. Every little bit of detail
Yeah.
considered. Now, the Levens Hall Gardens have already gotten a bit of association with art because the final of Landscape Artist of the Year was filmed there, wasn't it? Have you encountered other artists in the gardens whilst you've been there?
I haven't, no, but speaking to them, the team at Levens this time, I think they were really hoping that it will encourage like a whole raft of people to come and see it. And I'm going to be painting more throughout the season. There's people going to come and meet me, and
Mm,
I'll have some free workshops, and I'll just be also there on some days. If it's really wet, I'll be painting in the Eleven's kitchen cafe, and hopefully that will encourage people to go, oh, actually, I could just ring them and say, is it possible just to take some paints down and sit and paint?
yeah.
So apparently it did happen, but it's sort of gone. Whether that's a COVID thing, certain things have disappeared, haven't they?
Mm,
People have sort of retracted into their homes for a period of time, and they've never come back doing the same thing. And that could be one of them. So yeah, it'd be
yeah.
nice to see more people joining me.
Mm,
When you see it on the events calendar that Bob is painting at Levens Hall, come and say hello. That also means come and paint as well if you want.
yeah. Oh, now. Maybe I need to get myself a paint box.
Yeah, get yourself a paint box and a darn comfy seat.
Yeah, and I'll be tracing because I certainly can't draw. But
Oh well, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Just be creative.
no, I'm very excited about your involvement this year as we've got World Topiary Day coming up, which is one of my PR babies, and you're going to be involved this year. I think you're planning a workshop that day, aren't you?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you tell
definitely.
us a little bit about that? How will that work?
Well, I'm going to be on site all. I think I'll be on site all weekend. I think it was also we're hoping to do some a competition with local schools in advance of that. We're going to design new topiary,
Oh,
so
right.
so I thought people would come along and
Hmm.
design the craziest things for that they would imagine that could be created out of topiary in this modern day world. Because a lot of the shapes in Levens have obviously evolved over the last 300 and odd years, but the but we don't in this country don't often see it as a new thing. So it'd be really
Hmm.
lovely to sort of see designs, and that's open to all. So that the competition will be run before then, but we'll do some children's workshops on World Topiary Day, get them looking at patterns for topiary, both in the shape that you would cut them, but also in the knot garden style as well, to creating sort of symmetrical patterns. So it lends itself to different people's artistic skills. So yeah, that'll be a bit different for me. Never done that before myself, so I'll look forward to doing it.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah. And we're also hoping that a local school might actually visit the gardens beforehand and take some sketches and that sort of thing. So hopefully, get kids really involved this year.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
something that we struggle with because it's on a Sunday and, it's not always easy for the children to turn up, but hopefully the school come beforehand and then they can come to your workshop on the Sunday and hopefully
yeah,
we can capture the younger generation.
yeah.
And talking about children, do you find that they're actually some of the most creative of the people on your workshops because they don't have a fear that adults have?
You know what? It's so weird you say that because I think I said that I was doing a workshop yesterday, and I was trying to explain to them, sketch and draw however way you want, just get creative. Well, at that workshop, there was a mixed workshop. I try and do that as much as possible because adults and children will work very effectively, even if they don't know each other, at a workshop. And one of the adults came away and he said, at first I was a bit phased by having the children there because he said, I don't really know why. He said, but it was so invigorating watching them just get on with the task. So I
Mm,
would give them some ideas, and he said they just did it and they weren't worried. And I was sort of fiddling around and not daring to put my brush in the paint.
yeah.
And he said it was so invigorating and just I just thought how perfect. So when you asked that question, of course, it came to mind. Of course, it's just perfect. A lot of children are like that. But I
Mm,
say, I do say to children, I teach art at a school every week, and I say to them that art, being creative or doing art, is in the same bracket as maths. You hear a lot of people saying they are no good at maths, and an equal number of people will say I cannot draw or I am no
mm,
good at art. That's crazy. When you say that sentence, I am no good at either for maths or English or for any subject, but or for art, that puts the block in. It's the
mm,
word you're saying puts the block in, and so you are stopping yourself being creative. It's that sort of action, and so children are generally looser with art than they are maths, but that as they age and mature, they suddenly think, "Oh, I'm not good enough, so I'll stop."
yeah.
So it's a very interesting psycho sort of analysis, and definitely only from on my perspective, from a layman's terms, but I do see it a lot with adults and the difference between adults and children and how they approach art.
Indeed. I'd probably say that to myself. I'm no good at art, and that's probably my barrier. I need to
Mm.
get over that.
You'd be surprised because there will I say to people, there will be a type of art that you are good at but you've just not experienced it because there's so many different things out there. So abstract art, Jane, you could be an amazing abstract artist, but have you ever been taught about abstract art and how that
Mm,
works? So
yeah.
and and obviously with abstract art it really is anything goes, and you could create something that everybody just suddenly go, oh, I love that. It's just not, you've just not found it.
Well, I think perhaps I did as a child when I think about it, Bob, because what I used to spend hours doing was kind of designing, well, drawing outfits, like fashion outfits.
Yeah,
So maybe that was my thing. I think that might be because I didn't have to draw people. I didn't have to draw things
yeah,
that I thought I couldn't draw, but I could draw a dress or I could draw a
yeah.
blouse or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that
definitely.
was
I
it.
think, and you've got to
Mm,
play to your strengths. And I don't do, when I teach people art, and particularly with art workshops, I always say to them, you're not coming into the workshop to paint a scene. Like, sometimes you see classes and you say, we're going to paint this scene. It's a woodland scene with trees, and everybody paints the same thing. Well,
mm,
that's not teaching you how to be an artist. It's teaching you how to copy a particular style that actually some of you might not be very good at, and it's
mm,
missing the trick on what you are good at. So I always think, well, let me teach them skills that then they might go, that skill I can do. I'll do loads of that for the rest of this workshop. And I'll say, we're going to do robins, but if you want to do robins in a very cartoon style, I'll explain how that works. But if you want to do it in my sort of realistic style, we'll explain how that works. And it makes sort of mix and match, but it plays to the strengths of some everybody individually rather than as a group.
yeah. That sounds really good. In fact, it reminds me, I've got a chef friend. He runs a culinary institute in Bologna, and he won't teach recipes because he says there's no point me teaching you to cook a recipe. You need the skills behind the
Yeah,
recipe. And
that's
that's
exactly
really the
yeah,
same thing
yeah,
that you're talking about there.
yeah.
Now, ideally, having seen your artworks in the gardens, people are going to be inspired to buy a copy of Tree Therapy. But where can they get it? Is it going to be in the Levens shop?
It
And
is.
do you have a target for how much money you want to raise for it from it?
I'd love to raise about £3,000 or £4,000 from sales of the book. It's going to be in the Lemon shop, so people can buy it there. And particularly I'm hoping that people will make the link and go, I really, I want a lasting sort of record of some of those images that they've seen and others. So that's the nice thing, is that it'll mix and match. So it won't
Mm,
be, well, I've seen those before. They're all in the set book. It'll be slightly different, and you can go buy it online and on Amazon as well. So, but mainly it'll be a Levin's shop, which is really nice, full of all
yeah.
sorts of other little things that fit with the theme of gardening and trees.
Mm. And what's going to happen to the artworks themselves at the end of the season?
Some of them are we're going to have an auction,
Hmm.
so we're going to auction them off, because they'll be great for outdoor areas, and they're still, as I said before, we test them for longevity, so they'll be great for walls, and there's so many different possibilities. And then some of them, there's ones that don't get sold. There were two options. Ones we were just going to give them to hospices with an easel, so they often, hospices have a garden, and so they'll probably sit on a hospice garden wall or on an
Mm,
easel there. So they won't go, they're not going to be stacked up and put somewhere, that
yeah.
either people will buy them or they will get donated to hospices.
Mm. Now, throughout this period, you're not just doing this, you've got other things going on. What do you do the rest of the time when you're not in the Levens Hall Gardens?
Well, when I'm not at Levens Hall Gardens, I'd either paint, and that will be, as I explained, I'll do that for myself, or I will be constantly painting new designs for cards to raise money for charity. So
Mm,
I constantly have to update that. And then I also teach. I unfortunately had to sort of semi-retire from teaching, my beloved teaching, just for protecting myself from being ill again. But I do teach art part time, and I do some supply work as well. And I love it if I go in to a school and they'll say, "Well, you're on supply today," but they're doing art this afternoon, and they think that I'm gonna go, "Oh no, I'm not very good at art," and I go, "Yes, I love to do that." So
mm,
I have a happy mix, and also on top of that, I went for I was asked to be not a registrar, a celebrant at a friend's wedding. And bizarrely, as a result of doing it, wasn't the official wedding, of course, because I wasn't legally trained to do it. But bizarrely, as a result of that, I was then asked to be a registrar at weddings. So I do go around this area with a small team, and work for the council registration service, and I marry people.
all
So
right.
that is a real, everybody who goes, well, where did that come from? So I do love doing that as well now. That's a really lovely thing to do. I'm blessed with, again, and you see, look at all these things. If I hadn't had epilepsy, I could have been still in that office in the
Yeah,
National Park
being
Authority.
bored.
Yeah, and if I hadn't had a heart attack, would I have loved? I still love teaching. Would teaching have worn me down, as it does a lot of people? But it's a hard
Mm,
job. So
mm.
I will always say I am still blessed. I am
Yeah, you
still
found
blessed.
what you
Yeah,
wanted to do
yeah.
through
I have a happy
a
mix. I think
circuitous route.
it's either blended working, isn't it, or something? I don't know. There's a title for that when you've got lots of little things going on.
Mm, yeah. And now your book's got some lovely comments from people. Do you have a favourite one in there?
I don't know. They all mean so much to the people that have written them. So I sort of think,
Mm,
oh, that's lovely. I like the ones when they capture a little bit about how nervous they were. No, I didn't think I'd be very good. Or
mm,
um, one that I got yesterday, actually, just randomly, a feedback from the workshop I did yesterday. They messaged me and said, "You won't know, but I'd been quite ill recently, and I with blood pressure." And I'd had to be hospitalized with high blood pressure. And they said when they came back from the workshop, it was normal, their blood pressure reading, because they're obviously having to do it frequently. And she said it was the first time in months. And
mm.
she was sure that it was because she just spent a
Yeah,
morning relaxing. And
relaxing.
I just thought how lovely that was. And
Mm,
I didn't think, oh, that's a gimmick or anything. I'd go, well, yeah, I think that is exactly why your blood pressure was down, was because you need to just take time to breathe. And so, yeah, I thought that was lovely. That really did mean a lot to me, because I can see that myself.
Yeah, I mean, I like the one, there's a lady who talks about her bereavement and how
Mm,
you helped with her grief, which I like. I also like the one about Sycamore Gap, where a child has sort of talked about the loss of the Sycamore Gap
yeah,
tree, particularly probably because I set up Northumberland Day, so that's quite personal to
yeah,
me. But yeah, there's some lovely comments in there, and that must be very rewarding when you get those comments.
yeah. It is lovely, and yeah, maybe I'll come across something where it's negative, but I never did. I've never done that so far. People just enjoy the process of being creative and are generally surprised.
Mm. Now, if people can't get to Levens Hall and Gardens, can you give us the URL for where they can buy the book from your site?
Yeah, it's www.bobonpaintings.com.
Yeah,
So bobonpaintings.com. You'll be able to find that by searching it really easily.
right. Because I'm sure that a
Yeah.
lot of people out there, and will if they're overseas, will they be able to? Well, I suppose through Amazon, will they be able to get a
Yeah,
book?
and also they can do that through me. I've painted for people across. I've sent commissions out to New Zealand, to Australia, America several times, Canada. The paintings are all the way across the world. So yeah, I'll do it for anybody anywhere.
Right.
Send them anywhere.
Okay,
No
that's
problem with
great.
that.
And finally, do you have a message for anyone out there who's perhaps experiencing the sort of medical shock that you went through? What would be your message to them?
I probably covered it a little bit with what I've said earlier, but I think particularly I'm an ambassador for epilepsy action, and so I will. I think I'll always focus primarily on that to tell people, particularly young people in their teens, when they think that it feels like they are still having seizures and their life seems as if it's going to be complicated or not necessarily what they want. It isn't true. It isn't
Mm,
true at all. I always say life finds a way.
hmm.
What I would say, life finds a way. And in general, that will be positive.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time, Bob. That's been wonderful to hear about your project
No,
and the
it's all
wonderful
right. Thank you
artworks.
for having me. And thank you for, believing in what I'm doing. That's just so lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great, wasn't it? Many thanks to Bob there for sharing his fantastic and inspiring story and also news of what is to come at Levens Hall and Gardens this year. Hopefully, you'll be inspired to pop along for yourself and see his artworks, or else just pick up a paint box and have a go at art yourself. I'll be coming back to you shortly, probably in early March, with a podcast that is likely to be from Germany, so do look out for that. In the meantime, whether you are in Morecambe Bay or in Malibu, do take good care of yourself, and remember, as I always tell you, that life is much more fun when you're poodling around.